What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're here for a very special episode. We're going to be doing a mock draft with Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers. So we're going to have some player takes for you, hopefully draft some good teams. But if this is your first time at the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's get into this mock draft. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. It's a big thing for me to have you on this channel. I'm not going to lie. I'm probably going to give you a little bit of a backstory here just because I credit the Ballers as a little bit of inspiration or motivation for why I even started doing content in the first place. I had a college buddy that me and him would always listen to the Ballers podcast in we were listening to it in class, so we really probably should have been paying attention. But we were still learning, right? And then we would debrief whenever we get to the lunchroom in cafeteria. So he wanted me to start doing a league podcast for our league, and it's kind of expanded to this. So you guys are a big inspiration. So for me, this is a big deal to have you on the podcast because this is like a full circle moment for me.
Well, that's really cool. Yeah, that's not too dissimilar than the way we got rolling here over at Fantasy Footballers. So I relate. It's kind of just an overflow of a passion for the game, and that's awesome. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. So look, we are here today for a mock draft. So I will pull that up on the screen so everybody can see that. For the folks at home, this is going to be a 12-team PPR, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex, and 4 bench. So we got everybody loaded up in here, ready to go. Andy, you took the 106, and I took the 112, so we should have a little bit of a space between us. Hopefully allows us to rattle off some player takes, but let's just get this thing started. Let's go in and see what happens.
Perfect. Sounds good. No surprise there. So, Jamar Chase. Darn, I hoped I got him at 6.
Yeah, right. I hoped I got him at 12. But yeah, Jamar Chase off the board at the 101. We'll see what happens at the 1-2 here. But we did get hit with some news right before we kind of started here recording today with Rashee Rice. I'm just curious, maybe you don't, even have kind of your thoughts gathered around the situation, but that's going to have some big implications, I think, for redraft leagues this year. How are you kind of feeling about that?
Yeah, no, we've talked about it a little bit. We recorded our Footcast earlier this morning when that news was breaking, and yeah, it's massive. I mean, he's going to get a suspension in 2025, which is something we weren't sure was going to happen. We thought maybe it'd get pushed back a little bit, and we don't have a lot of precedent for this exact situation. It seems like probably a minimum of 3. As I get to the to my spot here in the draft with Jefferson, Chase, and Amon-Ra off the board, I'll go ahead and full PPR, but I'll take Saquon there at the 106. But yeah, I'm really nervous. I mean, I think he could be. I took 4 games off my projection initially. We don't have news from the NFL on what they're going to do, but that's where I'm starting. But I think it could be 4 to 6 probably is where it's going to settle in, and that's going to change Worthy. It's going to change obviously Rice's draft capital. It's going to change Kelsey. Maybe we care about him more than we used to. So it's a pretty impactful piece of news that we weren't sure we were getting for 2025.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of initially did it as 4 games as well. I think that's kind of probably where the sweet spot is going to be, but I'm with you. I think it's probably going to impact Worthy. We're going to bump him up the rankings, probably move Kelsey up the rankings. Maybe not the bounce back year from Mahomes, depending on how he gets off to a start. Right. So definitely big implications. But here I am going to go with Nico Collins at that first pick. And then I'm kind of sitting here between the running backs. I have Henry, Jeanty, and Achane, who are all kind of guys that I like. I have really big hopes this year for Devon Achane, but I think at this point in time, a full PPR, I think there's a little bit of a safer floor with a guy like Ashton Jeanty. So I'm going to take him there for the Las Vegas Raiders. Probably gets, some of the PPR work there as well. Be kind of the engine of this offense here in 2025 under Pete Carroll. So I'm going to start it off with that. Hopefully get some big weeks from, that balanced start with Collins and Jeanty. But do you want to talk a little bit about Saquon Barkley and why you selected him at the 106?
Yeah, I mean, just the full PPR obviously is why he slipped down. People were jumping in at wide receiver. Could have gone CeeDee Lamb. Would have been very happy with CeeDee Lamb. But having Saquon slip to 6 after what he did last year, bringing back the personnel that they had and feeling confident in the offense, it's a matter of stabilization, I think, for the roster. So it's going to box me a little bit into wide receiver here in the second round, most likely. But we'll see how that looks. That's why it's a mock draft. So looks like a lot of wide receivers.
Here on Henry.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Yeah, Derrick Henry. Goodness. PPR with Barkley and Henry could happen.
But yeah, we've had a pretty big wide receiver run here. It does feel like the wide receiver position is just every year just creeping up boards even more and more. And then this year, it feels like, with last year's breakouts from McConkey and Neighbors and even London to an extent, BTJ, like it just feels like the first two rounds of these drafts is going to be loaded with wide receiver talent.
Yeah, and that's where I went. I ended up going Garrett Wilson, fresh off that sweet extension. I could have rolled the dice with someone like Tyreek Hill, but I didn't want to go first two rounds with two guys on the backsides of their career in Barkley and Tyreek. So went with the PPR nonsense that Garrett Wilson represents. And I'm not the most confident Justin Fields fan, but I think it'll work out to stabilize this offense with that amount of targets.
Yeah, you get that college connection for whatever that's going to be worth here at the NFL level.
True.
I think the argument definitely is that we've seen Justin Fields pepper his wide receiver one before with the DJ Moore circumstance that happened with the Chicago Bears just a couple years ago. Is that, an outlier season from Justin Fields, or is that going to be like something we can see here with Garrett Wilson? Wilson just got that big extension as well. Does that kind of play a role into making sure he gets a couple extra touches this season? I don't think it's a bad selection, and I think there's definitely a few ways that could go this year with the Jets.
Yeah, that's just it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out and what the future holds with that extension and who his quarterback is for the next few years. But
All right, so
Bowers went right after me, and it was a thought to maybe look that direction, and probably would have felt more confident doing it if I had a wide receiver in the first round.
Yeah, you think just the fact that you got into that running back position early on, it kind of boxed you into the wide receiver position?
I did feel a little bit more boxed in. Now I'm gonna roll tight end here. With Trey McBride, just the value he provides to the Cardinal offense, he is their real number one, and so I'm gonna go that direction. If Tyreek had fallen all the way back to me at 306, I would have gone Tyreek, but I'll take Trey McBride basically around behind Brock Bowers. I don't really view them very differently in terms of fantasy output. I don't know how you feel about those guys.
Yeah, I don't view him much differently either. I am a big fan of Trey McBride. I think, when it comes down to guys that can compete for that tight end one job this year, it's Bowers, McBride, and Kittle. And, Kittle went right after your McBride pick. But I think all of those guys have a chance at being the number one tight end this year. So I don't think it's a bad pick. In a full PPR as well, McBride's going to get a ton of those receptions. You said he's the true number one. I believe he is as well. So, yeah, I think it's a solid pick. And it does keep you a little bit well-rounded here, where it does kind of seem like your next pick, you have the luxury of going anywhere, best player available.
Yeah, I don't feel too bad here in a full PPR with Barkley, Wilson, and McBride, and you're almost on the clock here with Collins and Jeanty off the board and a couple more picks. And how do you feel about drafting at the turn in a full PPR?
Yeah, this is my first time kind of getting the turn, giving it a try here. It's not too bad. I feel like you get put in a spot where most of the time when you're at a turn, you do kind of have to reach for your guys, or you're kind of trying to chase somebody that falls. Here, I do think there's somebody that's fallen a little bit. I think Kyren Williams is a pretty solid pick. I'm going to take him and have him be my RB2. There's been a lot of talk this offseason about potentially, these rookie running backs of Jarquez Hunter and Blake Corum, who, was last year's rookie. Are they going to end up taking touches? I don't think so. I think, they're looking to give Kyren Williams the extension, and he's probably going to see a full workload. And this is also a team that is, as of last year, started really focusing on getting Kyren Williams the football when they get into the red zone. So I think he has a lot of opportunity there, but I'm going to double up on Rams as well and take Davante Adams. I think he's also a player that, yes, he's older, and I think, you catch players in the back half of the career, there's always a little bit of a risk with that, where they could potentially fall off and not give you the same numbers as they did. But we've seen Stafford pepper his wide receivers, so I think there's just enough offense here in Los Angeles where it's going to be condensed between those three guys of Puka, Kyren, and Adams. And I think Adams also, at the end of the year, would not be surprised if he's flirting with top 12 numbers.
I had wishful thinking that he might fall all the way through to the 407, so I respect the pick. It makes sense. Double Rams. You'll be in trouble if Stafford gets hurt, and I'm a little bummed because I just saw Alvin Kamara went off the board. He would have been my pick here. I did have a backup plan that I'm going to end up selecting, but Kamara in a full PPR in the fourth round, I would have been very comfortable with. Joe Mixon's still sitting there, so I'm taking one more look over. DK Metcalf is interesting. But I'm going to roll with Joe Mixon here because I think it's kind of a tier break at running back that's coming up. I still like Connor. You got some of the rookies on the board, but I think beyond Mixon, there was a tier break. So I'm gonna see what kind of value I can get at wideout a little bit later.
What do you take from early offseason? Joe Mixon showing up in spring practices with the boot on and, some of the ankle injuries that he had last year. It's reported he's going to be healthy going into training camp, but does that make you nervous at all, making that selection with
Always.
Mixon,
Yeah.
knowing that he already has some injuries?
It does. It makes you very nervous. I mean, I like Houston. I like their position in that division. I like the fact. I think Mixon is kind of going to be the the bell cow there. I think they have no different plans, but his health. I mean, he dealt with ankle injuries multiple times, and then you just don't like hearing news like that in the offseason. But it's early enough, and the team is talking positively enough where I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore it here for this mock draft, and we'll pay more attention to it later if it's still a problem.
Yeah, I think it's going to be big. I did a video.
You said you think the injury is going to be big, or what do you think is going to be big?
Oh, no, I said I did a video on the channel the other day. I think it's going to be something big to watch for Joe Mixon.
I got you. I got you. Yeah,
I had
sure.
the video was 32 players and what you should be watching from these 32 players, one from every team in training camp, and Mixon was my guy to watch the ankle injury.
Well, I'll take my guy here. Mixon was the 4th round pick, and I'm going to go with Jameson Williams here in the 5th round.
Good
He
pick.
has been one of the players I've really fallen in love with this offseason, so I'm going to go there. I could have maybe looked at Xavier Worthy, who's going to go up boards a little bit and have a nice start at least with Rice out, but I'm going to go with a guy I have a great deal of confidence in.
Yep, I had both of those guys in my queue as well. Was looking at Worthy, looking at Jameson. I think that tier, this grouping of, it's kind of like the wide receiver twos, Pickens included. He was also in the queue for me. All of those guys have that spike week potential that you want to see out of your player that you're probably going to be plugging into the flex spot most weeks. So I really do like what they bring. All of them in pretty good offenses, really good offenses for the most part. We're talking about Worthy maybe, early this offseason saying that they're going to try and get him the ball a little bit deeper downfield. If that helps, if that really does happen for the Chiefs, I think that helps a lot as well. So yeah, lots of good options right here. And this is a pretty sweet spot to be grabbing your 3rd wide receiver.
A lot of wide receivers going off the board this round.
Yeah, I would have liked to grab one, but I'm going to lean into a little bit of high T here. I'm going to go James Conner for the first pick. Still think he's a player that's just people are bored of. It's name fatigue at this point, but he still produces as an RB1, high-end RB2 on a week-by-week basis. So I'm probably going to take him there. And then for my next selection, I'm going to go back to the wide receiver position. I think I'm going to take my shot on Jaylen Waddle for the Miami Dolphins. You talked about maybe Tyreek Hill being in the back half of his career, and if we see a little bit of regression out of him, Waddle was a player that they were saying, was one of the most impressive in OTAs this spring and this summer. And if that carries over, you get a healthy Tua Tagovailoa. Tyreek is, maybe taking a little bit of regression here in his later years. Maybe we get a little bit of a bounce back for Jaylen Waddle, who has given us flirting with wide receiver 1 seasons and has given us a wide receiver 1 season before in the past.
Yeah, I like it. He was in my queue as well, and it would have been in strong consideration if he somehow slipped to 607. Looking at how the draft played out, I was on the fence mixing Metcalf. With how far Conner fell, in retrospect, I would have liked to have gone Metcalf and then come back in the 5th round with Conner, because I don't look at Mixon and Conner too differently, but I didn't think Conner would make it that far. So that's the kind of fun part of these mocks, is you get to see how these things play out. Huge wide receiver run. Now you're seeing, Conner, really good value you got on him, I think, at 512. I'm back on the clock. Saquon and Mixon, the running backs. I can turn to a rookie here. I could go to like a Travion Henderson, who'd be in consideration. I could look at somebody that I think, the one thing about Jameson Williams is there's some volatility. It's a full PPR. I need depth at wide receiver. Calvin Ridley's going to get a ton of targets. You could go Travis Hunter and another guy like in Odunze. I think I'm going to roll the dice with Odunze and hope that I'm getting a really special value out of one of those two, either Jameson or Odunze, or maybe both. But both of those players have a lot of upside to outperform the draft value. It's just a matter of, is this the right season for it to happen? I think it is for both guys, but I'm going to roll the dice there and see how that works out.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting because you have the Ben Johnson narrative now double time on your roster. Does the Ben Johnson departure hurt Jameson Williams and the Lions, but also does Ben Johnson help Rome Odunze and the Chicago Bears? So it's interesting. The hope is that the Lions don't see, a decrease. And I don't know if they really will. They made the hire in-house. It was a guy that was underneath Ben Johnson. Like, it should be pretty consistent. But I'm big on Rome Odunze this year. I'm really excited to see what he does. I think he can really be the number one wide receiver in this offense, playing a little bit of both inside and outside. He profiles as an X, but also does really well within the slot as a receiver. So I think he's very exciting. Ideally, when the Chicago Bears made that draft pick just a year ago, it was to pair Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze long term as their top two options on offense. So I have big hopes for Rome Odunze this year, and I love the Ben Johnson hire for him.
Yeah, no, it will be really interesting to see how both those offenses play out. We just did a NFC North breakdown show, and it's hard because I kind of got a soft spot for kind of all four teams in different ways where I want to see them succeed, and you just literally can't in a division like that. They all have a top 10 most difficult schedule in part because they're playing one another. So, all right, somebody's paying attention here. Dang it. Calvin Ridley off the board, one pick ahead of. I was thinking about getting him in the 6th. If I had grabbed him again in the 7th, that would have been great. But I'm not going to get him. I'm going to go with. I'm going to stay. I'm going to go with 3 wide receivers in a row from the same division. I'm taking Jayden Reed in the 7th round. So 1 from the Lions, 1 from the Bears, 1 from the Packers. I don't know if that means Jordan Addison has to be on my team next round, but we'll see.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's also a guy who's got some news today. Our Jordan Addison went 6'4", actually. So that's that. But he also had a suspension.
Okay, good. Yeah,
or he's probably going to get a suspension.
Looks like 3 games is most likely.
Something like that. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's something I've been monitoring. I'm a Vikings fan, so
Yeah. Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big Vikings fan, so I was glad to hear that you have love for the NFC North. I got huge expectations for JJ McCarthy. Really excited to see what he does. But yeah, Jordan Addison, it looks like he's probably going to be somewhere between like 2 to 4, but you said 3. I think that's probably the sweet spot.
It'll be interesting for sure. So, I went 3 straight wideouts. You have been, you had Waddle and Connor, and now you're back on the clock.
Yeah, I think for this first one, I'm looking at Bo Nix here. Tony Pollard is interesting just because he's kind of a volume play, but I don't love I'm just not super confident in that selection. I think I'm probably going to go with Bo Nix for the first pick, have him be my QB1. I like the rushing upside. I think they can improve with Evan Engram in the offense now this year as well. The second selection, this is where it gets tougher. I think I'm going to probably just go with a guy that I liked what we saw from last year in Khalil Shakir. I think he had, some good PPR games. The ceiling was still, I feel like it's still kind of untapped. We didn't see him hit any of those spike weeks, but does he improve a little bit more this year as, his second year going in as the wide receiver 1 or the first option in this offense? Maybe. Like I said, that was kind of a low confidence pick, but I'll buy into a good offense in Buffalo and just take the PPR receiver there and just have him as a option to throw into my flex when I need him on some bye weeks and some injuries.
He feels like a better pick in full PPR leagues than anywhere else, so I can't blame you on that.
Yeah, I think the only other guy that, like I said, Pollard, but I'm now 3 running backs in. I don't want to grab Pollard here. I think there's just some running back value later where I'll just take the receiver. And it does seem like this draft room of people loves the wide receiver position.
I'll tell you right now, and maybe I'll let the countdown go down first, but Pollard, yeah, okay. So Tony Pollard will be my pick. That's who I was hoping would slip all the way through. I needed a third running back, and you already mentioned Mixon's ankles. So let's get another running back on the roster. Love Josh Downs that went right before me, but if Pollard made it through, and that's Pollard after ETN, that's Pollard after Brian Robinson, I don't mind that at all. 8th round, starting running back, give me some depth. I'm cozy there.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Like I said, I feel like he's a player that, you have to kind of project an improvement in this offense under Cam Ward. You probably got to project Tony Pollard seeing the majority of that workload that he had last year. We've got a little bit of coach speak from Brian Callahan saying that they want to get Tyjae Spears more involved. He kind of said that at times last year too, and I just feel like it never came to fruition. So a healthy Pollard at times last year, this is a guy who was seeing like 20 to 25 touches and opportunities a game. So I mean, I don't, as a running back 3 on your roster with Mixon a little bit banged up, I don't mind that at all.
Makes sense.
I think I'm going to bring up the Rashee Rice thing one more time because, now that we've seen him get picked here, 410 is where he goes in this draft. I feel like that's early still based on the projection of the suspension. Where do you think he should really be going, or do you think that that's the right spot for him?
I think it's way too early. I think it's way too early because I do think it's going to be 4 to 6. I mean, maybe more. And it's just such a tough bet. Like, I know the hype is real and people are so excited about his potential in the offense, but we really only got 3 games last year. And this was an offense that didn't have Worthy established. He was brand new. It didn't have Hollywood Brown was hurt and out of the offense, and and Pacheco went down early. So it's just that there were a lot of factors in play that weren't there this year. I still loved Rice and liked his potential for if he had a full season, but you've got missing games, and then you got to come back and answer those questions. So yeah, it's too early for me, especially if it's going to be your wide receiver 2 spot there in a full PPR where you don't get to play him, and he's not going to be IR eligible. So that would give me pause. I'm back on the clock. I took Pollard last round. I would have pulled the trigger on Kyler, I think, right there. But instead, I'm gonna go back to the wide receiver. Well, I'm gonna take Jauan Jennings. We don't have a lot of settled pieces in San Francisco at the wide receiver position, but Brandon Ayuk, when's he gonna come back? Jennings right now wants a tweak to the contract. Pearsall, a lot of potential, but no Debo anymore. An offense we still think is going to be successful, and we saw him and Brock Purdy get it done. So 9th round, I don't mind rolling the dice there and seeing how it goes and just continuing to wait on quarterback.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think, what do you think is going to happen there with that Jennings contract? Do you think they're going to give him the little money that he wants, or you think?
Yeah, I think they'll probably do like a little twist, a little tweak, maybe make an adjustment that makes him happy. You see Ayuk going this round as well, and I like that Jayden Higgins pick right after mine. But yeah, I think they'll make him happy because they need him. This is his time for a little bit of leverage at an older age.
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit of a tight end run now. I kind of was hoping Tucker Kraft made his way back to me. I probably would have really liked to press draft on that pick. I think I'm just going to go back with this first of the 2 back-to-back picks to the wide receiver position. I'm going to go Darnell Mooney for the Atlanta Falcons. I think he's a player in a PPR format as well. Probably has some upside. We saw last year, him give us some spike weeks as well. And Kyle Pitts trade rumblings, I don't know if that actually happens, but there's a chance that maybe that happens mid-season or maybe in the preseason still. Other than that, I guess I will take a player that has some news right now about an eye injury. I think I'm going to go Najee Harris here. We don't really know what's going to happen with him at this point in time, but I really like Amarion Hampton. I think he's a player that's probably going to get a pretty good workload by the end of year. But if Najee Harris does show up early on in these practices and he gets a little bit of the workload early on in the year, it's hard for me to think that Greg Roman and John Harbaugh aren't going to be, or Jim Harbaugh aren't going to be out there giving him some touches. And it's just an offense where they run the football enough, and there's going to be some goal line opportunities that I think I can probably rely on him early on in the season. And if it doesn't work out, he's a player that I have no issue cutting to pick up the next waiver wire pickup as soon as, the first couple of weeks come by.
Definitely makes sense at this point in the draft. Very low risk, along with Najee, who I think got put on NFI today.
Yeah.
So we'll see when he's active. But I agree with you. If he's healthy, they'll get him touches, and the offense is one you can have a lot of confidence in for sure. So,
yeah, they're reporting it's going to be a short stint, but we don't know. I mean, obviously we don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I still need a quarterback in the next 2 rounds. I was kind of hoping J.K. Dobbins would slip through as a 10th round pick here before we wrap up. It might mean that I'm kind of turning to my, quarterback of choice here since he's off the board. There's a number of guys. I think Jordan Love could be interesting. I'd have the stack with Jayden Reed, but I'm actually going to roll with Dak in this round. I'll go Dak with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens and seeing how a healthy Dak in that offense. We know how good he's been when he's healthy. He's always been kind of a fantasy relevant quarterback. And in the 10th round, I'll roll the dice there and I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, I like Dak as a bounce back candidate as well. Every year that he's been healthy, he's, really flirted with these top 12 numbers as QB1. And his last full healthy season, I think off the top of my head, is 2023. He was like a top 5 QB that year as well. So player that just, I think when he's healthy, when he's on the football field, he's going to perform as a fantasy football asset for us. So I definitely like him. George Pickens, like I said, I like that addition as well. Should air it out a little bit more. The run game's weak or projected to be weak there for Dallas. It could be a good year for Dak Prescott. I like the pick. I'm trying to see, maybe I shouldn't say it out loud because then you always get your pick taken when you say it out loud. But I'm trying to see if my theory worked. All of the teams have tight end at this point, and I thought about tight end with my last selection there with Najee, but I'm wondering if because it's just, the one starting tight end, if everyone's going to pass on it now over the next round, or I guess it was 2 rounds at that point, and am I going to get my choice anyways? Because I was thinking about Dalton Kincaid, and he would have been a guy that I might have took a shot on, but I'm playing chicken right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's, well, Isaiah Likely went off the board, so we did get a second selection there, but I think that's how you have to play the game, right? I mean, it's in your best odds that nobody's going to double up, and if they double up, it's potentially to their detriment. And I'm trying to make the decision now. I've only got 3 running backs. I've got my final pick, and I've got a couple of options if I wanted to hedge a little bit. We'll see who goes here. 10 seconds left on the pick before me. I'll probably take Tyjae Spears with the final pick. Yeah, he didn't go. So I'll go ahead and take Tyjae Spears. And I don't really love taking a whole backfield of a team that I don't think is going to win a ton of games, but Spears he was productive enough. Like him and Pollard were actually pacing very similarly at the end of last year in terms of their production. So I'll kind of hedge a little bit with not a lot of depth at running back and take Spears with my final pick. Could have gone like a second quarterback. Since I took Dak with the 10th, could have gone like Drake May, but he ended up going at the top of the round. So yeah, it's Spears, at least if there's an injury there, one of those guys is going to be hyper productive.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to ask, even before you said if you were thinking of hedging, if you were going to think of it, how would you play that out, like early season roster wise? Like, I'm sure you don't want to waste
That's
2
why I
roster
almost never
spots.
do it. Yeah, that's why I almost never do it. You want to have flexibility, like you said, to be able to cut a guy. This is one very, very small situation where, look, in week 1, if something blows me away from a workload perspective, then I've got that insurance, right?
Yeah, we had a Tom Brady selection right there at the end. Whatever.
Oh, yes, we did. Wow. And you got Kincaid with the final pick, so.
Yeah, so I played chicken. It ended up working. Look, Kincaid, I think, is a player. It was between him and Ferguson. If Kincaid didn't go, I'd probably look at Ferguson. Both of those players, I think, you look at their offenses. We expect them to be good offenses. Both of them could be decent receiving targets in their offense as well. You get the added competition for Ferguson. Kincaid doesn't, so I will take Kincaid there just at hopes that, he's a player we all really liked last year as a potential breakout. Maybe it's a year delayed. The tight end position sometimes does take time. We got spoiled over the last couple of years with guys like Laporta and Brock Bowers, but it does take time sometimes. So Kincaid, I'll take the shot. He did deal with a little bit of injury last year too, so we'll see how that goes. But I do want to kind of just real quickly before we get on out of here, go through these teams, look at them. I ended up going Nico Collins, Ashton Jeanty, Kyren Williams, Davante Adams, James Conner, Jaylen Waddle, Bo Nix, Khalil Shakir, Darnell Mooney, Najee Harris, and Dalton Kincaid. I think if there's one pick maybe that I'm very nervous about, it's obviously the Najee one. If he's a guy that, like, first week, if somebody breaks out and is a running back on the waiver wire, I'm cutting Najee to just go pick him up and spend some of my fab. But everything else, it feels kind of well balanced. I think there was some value there with guys like Adams and Conner. So I don't dislike the team at all. I think the tight end position is probably going to be something that maybe I'm looking at the waiver wire to stream guys mid-season, but we'll see how that goes. I'm going to go to your team. You want to walk me through yours and kind of tell me your feelings?
Yeah, I went Saquon in the first, full PPR, a bit of a risk there. Came back with Garrett Wilson, and Trey McBride is my tight end. Took him in the third. Mixon at 407, Jameson Williams at 506, and then Odunze and Reed and Jennings rounding out the wideouts. Pollard and Spears my depth at running back there, and then Dak as my quarterback. I'm looking at the draft board. I was really on the fence, Mixon and Metcalf in the fourth. I wish I went Metcalf. I could have gotten Metcalf, stayed with Jameson Williams in the fifth, and then I still would have been able to add like a Travion Henderson, David Montgomery, Caleb Johnson in the sixth. That would have been a way to go. Or just come back with Conner in the fifth round and then still roll Odunze and Jayden Reed. That's my only real bit of hesitation here, in terms of like retrospect view. I'm pretty content with how it turned out. I'm a big Mixon fan. As long as he stays healthy. Saquon is a stalwart at 6. This is a guy that probably belongs or could very well belong at 1 or 2 in the draft if things play out the way Philadelphia would like them to. So I feel pretty cozy with the team. It's always interesting to see how things play out after you make selections, but not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. I like it. So there we are. That's what we have for you guys today, a mock draft. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that. Andy, thank you again so much for joining us on the channel. Like I said, big deal to me. So I appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, and good luck to you.
Always. Thank you. All right, guys, if this is your first time at the channel, make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit the like button, and also go join our free Discord. But nothing else for you today. We'll see you on the next one. Till then, peace out.